Be'ezrat Hashem. This is Parshat Titzaveh and Erev Purim Katan. Purim Katan is on Friday and Shabbos. Tomorrow is Yud Gimel. That means if this was a regular year, yet tomorrow would be Tanis Esther. And then Friday and Shabbos would be Purim. So since not a regular year, so it's Purim Katan. Okay, Davida and Mrs. Rappaport, you have to mute yourselves.
No, I'm not Rappaport. I'm Russell Neck.
You're Russell. You're Russell. Mr. Russell.
I'm sick, so I'm by my daughter.
Are you by your daughter? Fushleim.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So I can't see you, but I can see that you need to be muted. So maybe somebody could mute your phone. Oh, maybe I can't see you. Yeah, I can see you. Okay.
Oh.
So, okay. Oh, 1 second. Okay, here we go. We'll start again. Parshat Titzaveh, Choshen Pei Daled, the year of Mashiach's coming, Be'ezrat Hashem, and Amen. And Parshat Titzaveh is this. By the way, this year is Be'ezrat Hashem going to be recorded only the audio because I still have not figured out how to get a Zoom. So we're going to have an audio, Be'ezrat Hashem, with a cute picture that I'm going to find. I had to learn how to do that. I had to learn how to upload a shir onto YouTube. So that's what we're going to do. Be'ezrat Hashem. Okay. Remember last week we learned a little bit about the Aron Kodesh. So it's all about all these parshas now are all about the Mishkan. And we learned last week about the Aron Kodesh, that the Aron Kodesh was 3 boxes, one within another. The outer box was gold, then inside that was a wooden box, and then inside that was another gold box, so you didn't see the wood. And there were many different reasons about that. The wood represented the hope, the hidden hope that Yaakov Avinu had. He was the one who planted those trees in Mitzrayim, those special trees. And the wood is also humility. There's a lot of, and all the truth is that most of the Mishkan had in it layers. The things were made with layers, wood inside, and then sapui, covered with gold inside and outside, except for the menorah and except for the top of the Aron Kodesh. The top of the Aron Kodesh, where the kruvim were made out of pure gold, and the menorah was made out of pure gold. And Chazal tell us, we're going to learn today from the Mei Hashiloach, that Atzei Shitim, the wood inside, which is a lower level of value. So the Chazal say, the Gemara says in Pesachim, that represents the idea of a person doing a mitzvah, and they enjoy the mitzvah, and they're doing the mitzvah because Hashem says to do the mitzvah, but they also have some desire for reward, ultimately, or some kind of ulterior motive, some kind of a, I'm going to get something out of doing this mitzvah type of an attitude. That's called Aseh Shitim. But the menorah and the top of the Aron Kodesh had to be pure gold. Why? Because the kaparas, the top of the Aron Kodesh, represented the heart, because that's where Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu by the kruvim, and the menorah represented the eyes, because it enlightened. And he says, the Mei Hashiloach says, that's the Izbitz Torah, he explains that whenever you're doing mitzvot, it's understandable that you want to have, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I'm going to get a good Gan Eden, I'm going to make Hashem happy, I'll make a better life for myself, whatever. But also, but for the eyes and the heart, you can't. So that's called, the first part is called Mitzol Shelo Lishma Balishma. When you have a thought of some kind of a selfishness or self-centeredness or a self-awareness, that's purely, that's not L'Shem Shemayim, but you'll eventually get to L'Shem Shemayim. So Mitzol Shelo Lishma, the Pirkei Avos says, from doing a mitzvah not for its own sake, eventually you'll get to, if you want to, eventually you get to doing a mitzvah for its own sake. But the Rebbe says that you can't do that with your eyes and your heart. In other words, you have to guard your eyes very carefully, and you have to guard your heart very carefully, not to somehow use either of those parts of your being, not l'shem shamayim, hoping that eventually you're going to get to l'shem shamayim. Because that doesn't work. The eyes see things they shouldn't see, and the heart desires them, and you get into big trouble. So that's why these two parts of the Mishkan were pure gold, without any added wood, meaning without any added self-interest. Only l'shem. So the heart has to be, you have to guard your heart, who you love. Guard your eyes, what you look at, so that everything should be always l'shem shamayim. That's a short one. But really, what we like to learn here, and I learn it every single year with you, and I'm going to learn it again, Be'ezrat Hashem, because in Titzaveh we have the begadim, the clothing of the Kohanim, and the clothing of the Kohain Gadol, and especially the clothing, the Choshen. What was the Choshen? The Choshen Mishpat. That inside the Choshen Mishpat was the Urim Tumim. So I don't have a picture to show you, but I'm sure that I'm sure you've seen the Kohanim of the clothing of the Kohain Gadol he had a big neck. He had like a necklace. They call it a breastplate because it was on his chest, and it was perfectly square. It was called a Choshen, perfectly square. It had 12 stones, 3 per row, 4 rows, 12 precious stones, and each of these stones had the name of one of the tribes written on it, and each of these stones represented one of the tribes, and each of these stones had letters, also other letters on it, and inside this beautiful piece of jewelry, it was set on a plate of gold with embroidery. That the plate of gold was sewn into embroidery, and it was hooked onto him with shoulder straps. At the top of the shoulder straps were also 2 stones, the Abdei Shohem Miluim, and inside this contraption, which had a back to it, right? It had like a fold. It had a piece of embroidery, and it was folded, sewn together. The stones placed on top of that, on the gold setting, and inserted into the pocket of that Choshen were the Urim Tumim, which was the name of Hashem, special name of Hashem. And whenever the Kohain Gadol was authorized to ask a question of Hashem, in the times when Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't around, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't need anything to ask Hashem. He could just ask Hashem. He was an open line. He had an open line to Hashem. He never had to make an appointment, and he never had to whatever. But in times of when that wasn't available, when Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't available, they would ask Hashem, and they would stand up Kohain Gadol and ask the question to Hashem, and the Kohain Gadol was wearing this Choshen, and the letters would light up, the answer of the letters would light up. Then they had to write down what letters they were and sometimes rearrange them to get the actual answer. If it was an easy question like, should we go to war, yes or no? So the Aleph and the Lamed would light up, even if they lit up in Aleph Lamed or Lamed Aleph, but they knew that it was no, and Chaf Nun or Nun Chaf but they could rearrange those letters to make Ken, to make yes. So the Izbitz Rebbe has a very, very, very wonderful and fascinating teaching about each of these 12 stones. The name, the color, the tribe, and the meaning behind it, and the relevance to our day when Mashiach is coming any second. Now, we have a tradition that the Choshen is someplace here in Eretz Yisrael. We have a tradition that all of the furniture, all of the vessels that Moshe Rabbeinu made originally were passed down throughout the generations, were hidden by King Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech, and later on were hidden again before the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash, and substitutes were put into the visible Beis HaMikdash at that time. And so someplace, and the Choshen was hidden. It was hidden away someplace. We have a tradition that the stuff that's in the Vatican is not the original Moshe Rabbeinu Kalim vessels. that Chas v'Shalom Hashem would never allow the idolaters to touch the vessels of Moshe Rabbeinu. And so there's someplace. And so when Mashiach comes, they will be revealed. We know that the very famous story that during the time of the Chavetz Chaim, some farmer here in Eretz Yisrael found, he fell into a pit on his farm, and he found some of the vessels of the Beis HaMikdash, and they brought it to Reb Shmuel Salant, who was the chief rabbi of Jerusalem at the time. This was in the 1900s, 100 and something years ago. And Reb Shmuel Salant said that this farmer, and he sent with him a shliach, should go to the Chavetz Chaim, go to Europe, go to the Chavetz Chaim and ask him what to do. And so they did that, and I'm saying it in 2 seconds, but that trip took months and months and months till they got there to the Chavetz Chaim. And what did they say? And whatever it was, the Chavetz Chaim said, and this is how the story goes, that indeed you have stumbled upon one of the tunnels that Shlomo HaMelech made underneath the Beis HaMikdash to store some of the vessels of the Beis HaMikdash. And we don't know exactly what he found, this farmer, what he found, but the Chavetz Chaim told him that he should go back and come back to Eretz Yisrael and keep this place covered, or wherever the place is in his farm, not to touch the things, but to cover it up again, and that he should, before he dies, he should tell his son, someone in his family, this whole story, and also Reb Shmuel Salant was told they have to be a rabbi from the tzaddikim and someone from this man's family. 2 people in every generation have to know this whole story and where these vessels are. So I don't know where they are. Nobody told me, and nobody told me on any level. But someplace, we know that there are the vessels of the Beis HaMikdash. And you know that the fact that there's tunnels is a very big topic right now. It's a hot topic, right? Because now we find out that underneath every place practically in Eretz Yisrael are tunnels. Tunnels in Gaza that we know. And tunnels in the north that we know. And now we don't know what's underneath Har Nof. And we don't know. We know that there are tunnels. And whenever there's anything in holiness, there's also that same thing in Klippa, in the secular, or in the profane, or in the non-holy. And so, sorry, one sec. And so, paralleling the holy tunnels of Shlomo HaMelech and all the different righteous kings in the house of Beis David who dug tunnels, the clip of that is the tunnels in Gaza and the tunnels in the north. We can't imagine. I don't know how it is. I don't know. Maybe if you know anyone personally, I would. There are people in the Shomron who say that they hear tunnels being dug underneath their houses. And they told the army supposedly, and the army supposedly said they didn't pay attention to it. I don't know how that could be, and I wanted verification if that's true. Because how could, after we've gone through what happened in the south, how could the army overlook in Shomron if there are tunnels there, and if they're hearing machinery? I can't imagine that could possibly be, but it could be. And if that's true, then we have to alert the whole populace of Israel and whatever, respond accordingly. Okay, so some place is the Choshen. Now, also, what was the miracle of the Choshen is that the names of the tribes, and also Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Shiftei Kat, the names that were inscribed in the stones themselves were done by the Shamir, because they were not carved in. The Shamir, as you know, was this remarkable bug. We don't know what it was. An animal, we don't know what it was. It was like a laser. Nowadays we would call it a laser. And what was it? they would ink on the top of the stone inside, because the stone was like this big, small. They would ink on the stone the name Reuven, and then they would put the shamir on this, and it walked around each letter, but it didn't leave droppings or anything like that. It somehow bored into the stone the name Reuven. That the top of the stone was still smooth, the bottom of the stone was still smooth, but inside was cracked in the name of Reuven. I don't know if you ever did the marble trick. When we were little kids, we used to do this all the time. I forgot exactly how it goes. I think you bought marbles. Anyone even know what a marble is? Right? You bought these like glass. Yeah. The older generation would know. So they were little glass balls, and you used to play with them. But you would buy bigger ones, and you would put them on a frying pan, I think, to heat them up, and then somehow take them with the tongs and dump them into cold water, and then the inside of the marble would crack into all kinds of a pretty design, and the outside would remain smooth. That's how the marble was made. So it was similar to that, in that the inside, except that it wasn't haphazard. When you take a marble and you do that, then you get a haphazard design. But when you take the shamir, it followed along the edges of the letters that were drawn on top, and so it was etched. It was carved inside the stone, with the top and the bottom remaining whole. It was a miracle, and Shlomo HaMelech used that same shamir to Hew the stones out of the mountains here in Jerusalem and out of the mountains all over, because you know that the stones of the Beis HaMikdash, the stones of the Kotel, the lower down you go, you're not allowed to use. It says you're not allowed to use any metal on the stones of the Beis HaMikdash. Why? Because metal is used for war, and the Beis HaMikdash is a makom of peace. And so, they made the Beis HaMikdash out of stone. So how did they do this? So Shlomo HaMelech also traveled the world. He got the shamir stone, and they used that to go, and that shamir stone also. It was like nowadays we would say that it's some kind of a nuclear fission, laser, I don't know the technical terms for it, but it was such an energy that it was able to carve out rock from mountain, and then they were able to, so they would draw on the stone or on the mountain, and they would put the shamir, and it would just run around the edges, and somehow it sent its energy deep into the mountain, and all of a sudden the stone was in the shape of a square, whatever, and they would pull it out of the mountain. That's how they mined the rocks. You know that when we look at now modern technology, was so incredible about here. We're on a phone right now. We're on the devices right now, and we're all hundreds of miles away from each other, and yet we're talking to each other. And we say that's modern technology. And again, if Moshe Rabbeinu would come into our house right now, if he would come straight from Gan Eden without having a preview of what's going on here on planet Earth, which of course he knows what's going on, but let's just say he would be amazed at our everyday life. Electricity and heating systems, cooling systems, plumbing, everything is a big miracle, but we're used to it. And the shamir, but we hear about the shamir, we say like, whoa, that's amazing, because it was a natural, whatever you want to call it, a natural being, a live creature that had this power to send energy into a mountain and send energy into completely solid matter, and then just dislodge it and whatever, pull it out of the mountain. So we say on that, whoa, but they would say on us, whoa, on these devices that we have. So it's similar to that. Same thing with the pyramids, right? Everybody always says how they make the pyramids. The pyramids are a wonder of nature. They haven't figured out how they put the whole thing together, and how you can't even the rocks of the pyramids are there's no glue, there's no cement between the rocks. But they're perfectly synergized together. They fit, they dovetail perfectly. Ad kedei kach, you cannot put a credit card between any of the two rocks. It's so, welded together, so to speak, but it's not. It's just rocks that are measured a certain way. So that was the science of the ancients. They knew how to do things like this. just like they knew every single plant and what its medicinal properties were. Every single plant, every flower, even in one plant, they knew if the plant has leaves, it has one type of medicinal power. If the plant has flowers, it has a different. Even within one plant, if the plant is facing the north, then it's good for a certain thing. If it's facing the south, it's good for another thing. On the same plant, the leaves facing the south are good for one, the leaves facing the north are good for something else. And there are people now, there are Native American Indians, and I don't know, indigenous people all over the world, who we would consider them primitive because they don't know how to operate a phone, but they know all these things about the plants and the land. Okay, anyway, so I like to talk about the clothing of the Kohain Gadol, and specifically the Choshen of the Kohain Gadol. And the clothing of the Kohain Gadol I want to talk about in terms of its power. You know that we don't understand what the Beis HaMikdash was all about. We don't get what it was like to live as a nation with a Kohain Gadol. But in the times of the Kohanim, in the times of the operational Beis HaMikdash, the Kohain Gadol, when he would wear 8 garments, and every time he put on one of the garments, it had an effect, a spiritual effect on the souls of all the Jews. So the Gemara says that when he put on his pants, it was mechaper all the gili arayos, all the immorality of the Jewish people. And when he put on his miznefet, the hat, it was in the kippah, it was mechaper the gasus ruach, that means like gaidla. And if he put on the avnate, which was the apron, then it would mechaper on if anybody had thoughts that they shouldn't be having. And he put on the Choshen, which is what we're going to talk about in a second. Then it was mechaper. If anybody had a din against them, a judgment, a negative judgment, it took off that. And the ephod, which was also the apron, the outer apron, it was mechaper and avodah zarah. And all of the me'il was on Lashon Hara, the tzitz, the thing on his head, was as a metzach, like real arrogance. And the ketonet, which was the, how do you say that, the under outer garment was for if there was murder. Anyway, what happened was that every day the Kohain Gadol would put on all these 8 garments, and every day, every Jew, when he put on each of these garments, the Kohain Gadol had intentions, and he would say, "Hini muchan mezuman, hareini mekabel alai," right? Whenever he would say all the introduction, the shem yichukushas, he would say all the different things, and then he would put on the garments, and he knew what each garment was supposed to alleviate and fix and repair and elevate. And then a Jew who was perhaps had said Lashon Hara, and he needed a little bit of a push to do tshuva. So when the Kohain Gadol would put on the me'il, that would push. That would the Jew would remember that he has to do tshuva, and he would do tshuva on Lashon Hara. And when the Kohain Gadol put on the tzitz, right on his forehead, that said Kodesh Hashem. So then there was a Jew someplace who maybe was a little bit arrogant, and maybe he was a little bit controlling, and he needed to be reminded to do tshuva, and that would inspire him. And that was an amazing thing that the Gemara says also the karbanos, the karban mincha in the afternoon was mechaper, would atone for all the sins done by all Jews during the day, and the karban shachris would atone for all the sins that the Jews did from mincha of yesterday until the shachris. So you would cover 24 hours. There were 2 karbanos, one in the afternoon, one in the morning, and that spanned the 24 hours. How was that? Like, what does that mean? And if that's the case, then how could the Beis HaMikdash have been destroyed? And how could people have done such big averas of, sinas chinam and avodah zarah? How did that happen? So we don't understand the level of the greatness of the Jewish people. We don't understand the level of the greatness of the Jewish people. How even their souls were so big, our souls were so big, that despite the fact that we had all these systems put in place to forgive us, to inspire us, etc., we still had free choice. Okay, so then came the Choshen, and there were stones on the Choshen, and the first 3 stones were the ruby, the jade, and the agate. I'm using the translation from Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan's Chumash. The ruby was called Odem in Hebrew. The jade was called pitida in Hebrew, and the agate was called bareket in Hebrew. And it was called for Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. And Chazal tell us that Odem is the only one that we really, really know for sure what it is nowadays, and that's called a ruby. And the ruby is red, even though I heard that there are other colors of rubies. But basically, we know that a ruby is red, and it represents energy and happiness. And Reuven, whose name was Reuven. So we look at when if we look at Chumash in a babyish way. So we read and we don't learn deeply. Then we feel bad for Leah because she names Reuven, which means now my husband will see how good I am, and Shimon now he will hear, and Hashem will hear my cries, and Levi now my husband will love me. And it sounds like Leah is this misfortunate Nebuch, unloved wife, and she's naming her children because she wants to have a life, and she wants to have the love of her husband. That could not be further from the truth. That's ridiculous to learn like that. In first grade you can learn Chumash like that, but not as adults. As adults we have to understand that Yaakov Avinu and Rachel and Leah and Bilhah and Zilpah, they understood clearly what their job in this world was, and they lived every single day to fulfill that job. And so when Leah had Reuven, she named him Reuven, she was fixing the koach of Re'iyah in the Jewish people, fixing the strength, the essence of seeing, how we see things in the Jewish people. And when she named Shimon, she was fixing for all eternity the way that a Jew listens and hears things. And when she named Levi, she was fixing for all eternity what a Jew should attach to. And when she named Yehuda, she was fixing for all eternity, implanting in the Jewish people the ability to say thank you. And when she named Yisachar, she was reminding us that Yesh Zachar, that there is reward for everything that happens to us. And when she named Zevulun, she was blessing all of her descendants with a Zevul means a home. And when she named Gad and Asher both mean happiness. And so she introduced into the Jewish people the ability to fix ourselves from her 8 tribes, right? Because she had 6 that she gave birth to, and then Zilpah gave birth to 2. So she fixed the Mashiach ben David stuff, meaning it's going to be elevating our ability. All of our senses are elevated by Leah's naming us. And Rachel, she fixed davening, the deeper element of davening, and dealing with pain, because what were the names of her children? Dan and Naphtali. That was Bilhah's children, but Rachel named them. Dan from the word din, judgments, and Naphtali from the word travails. And then she had Yosef and Binyamin. Yosef means I need more. I want to have a continuity. And Binyamin, right? Yaakov Avinu named Binyamin, but she named Ben Oni, the son of my travails. In other words, Rachel Imenu, and that's why if you look in the Tikkun of Tikkun Rachel and Tikkun Leah, in the Tikkun Chatzos, Tikkun Rachel is more crying, and Tikkun Leah is more hopeful. Because Leah Imenu, that she introduced into the Jewish people the concept of hope. And Rachel Imenu introduced into the Jewish people the ability to survive exile. And that's why Yosef Atzadik comes first. Mashiach ben Yosef gets us out of exile. Then Mashiach ben David fixes the universe. So I just want to go through a little bit of some of the ideas in their names. Okay? Reuven means see life in a positive way. I'm just gonna do as much as I can of this teaching in a quick way. So Reuven is the color red, and it means to be optimistic. That's what it means. To see with simcha, because the Izbitz Torah says that the color red is the color of the blood, right? The color of the blood is the color of life. And the color of life, or life force, is about simcha. It's about living your life in the best way. So red, even though we don't wear red as an outfit because it's too bolate, and nowadays, in terms of halacha, that's a chumrah. In old days, in the times of the Gemara, when everyone wore black and brown, and because there were no colors, you're not allowed to wear red because it was too for a woman, because it was too in your face, and that's why the priests, the Catholic Church and the Inquisition, they all wore red because they wanted to stand out. They wanted to show power. They wanted to write, and Lahavdil to make a separation because he's not a cursed man. Trump always wears a red tie to show power because red now is a power color. And nowadays women could wear red because colors are not a big deal nowadays. Everybody wears every color. Still, it's a chumrah for very, very pious women to not wear a total red outfit. But red represents the concept of energy and simcha. Green, which is the Titzaveh, the next one, is a concept of the beautiful world. Go outside now, because we had good rain here in Yerushalayim, here in the whole country. Go outside, go to a park, and look at the green. I just was doing that today. I was walking home, and I was looking at the incredible. They're perfect greens now, because it wasn't too rainy, which makes everything like mushy and moldy, and it wasn't dry, which makes everything brown. It was a perfect weather this winter. So the greens now are bright, good greens, and they're healthy green. And that is Hashem makes a beautiful world of nature and healing. So that's Shimon. And Chazal tell us that in Atbash, right, Titzaveh, if you look at the letters of that interesting stone, so Peh, right, and the Tet and the Daled are before the Yud and the Hey. So it's God is here. That's what nature is. Right, again, I'll say that again. The name of the stone is Titzaveh, Pei Tes Daled Hey. So the Pei and the Hey means here, Po, also Peh, mouth, and the Tet and the Daled are the letters before Yud and Hey. That represents Hashem in a hidden way. Pei Tes is Yud Hey. There are a lot of different ways of doing the Hebrew letters, and one of them is by looking at the letters before a word or the letters after the letters before a letter. So Pei, the letter, or letter after the letter. So Pei is the letter preceding Yud in the Hebrew alphabet. Dalet is the letter preceding Hey in the Hebrew alphabet. So they're the hidden form of the Yud and the Hey. That's the color green. Color green is Hashem is here in the beautiful world that He gives us. Hashem could have made this planet with no colors whatsoever. Right? Remember when Har Nof was built? All those, how many years ago was that? 40 years ago? Let's see. Yeah, something like that. They were so concerned because it was really the first neighborhood that was built as lots and lots of buildings. And so they planted a lot of greenery, and to try to offset the white, because the golden stones, right, the white gold stones of Yerushalmi stones. So I always say the color of the Eretz Yisrael is, well, the color of Yerushalayim Kodesh is white, blue, and green. White is the buildings, white gold. Blue is the sky, tcheles, and green is the grass. That's how Hashem colored Yerushalayim Kodesh. Then comes Bareket, is Levi. Levi has different colors, and there's no agreement until we find actually the Choshen. We don't exactly know which color, but which color is the Bareket, because according to Rav Aryeh Kaplan, who was an amazing researcher, he says it's called an agate, and it's red, white, black stripes. It's a stone that had red, white, and black stripes. That's what he says. But according to the Mei Hashiloach, the Izbitz Torah, it was yellow, or like yellow-white, because it was this color of barak. Barak means lightning, because bareket has the word barak in it. And so he talks about that the color of barak, when there's lightning. So what is that color? That color of you see different colors in the sky when you see lightning, but basically it's a whitish yellow, or really a white, depending on how many clouds there are. And that, he says, is the color of clarity. The color of clarity, because barak, in the nighttime, right, it's all dark, and all of a sudden there's a flash of lightning. Then the whole sky lights up, right? That color of whitish, yellowish. that color is the color of clarity. So when you want clarity, you're going to put on an outfit that's white gold, or an article of clothing. When you want, if you look at now, we talk about this every single year. There's a pseudoscience called color therapy. Color therapy is, as I said, it's a pseudoscience. It's based on the wavelengths of the colors in the spectrum and what they arouse in the person's brain. And I'm not an expert at all in color therapy, but everybody knows that certain colors evoke certain emotions in people. For example, they know now, since we said before that red is a powerful color, you don't put red in the bedroom of a child because it's too stimulating. You don't want them to be stimulated. You want them to go to sleep in their bedroom. In the playroom, you could put red. And in the gun, in the schoolroom, you could put red. But in the sleeping area, don't put red. Don't put them on red pajamas and all of that, because that's a stimulating color. What are the relaxing colors? Blues and greens and purples. Those are the relaxing colors. The shmimi, the heavenly colors. So we know that. We know that, but that's not, we know that from pseudoscience. But the Torah here is telling us, the Izbitz Torah is telling us about the actual Torah-based verses, or the Torah ideas of these colors. Okay, that was the first row. The second row is Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zvulun. The first row was Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. The second row is Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zvulun. Again, that's the row on the Choshen of the Kohain Gadol. We have 4 of them, each 3 stones. Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zvulun. Yehuda's stone, the Rabbi Kaplan calls it a bluish green, and that's because bluish green is one of the colors of Malchus. However, the Izbitz Rebbe says that the Nofach is all the colors. It's a stone that has many, many colors. And one of the other ideas that he has in Rabbi Kaplan says is that it's black, white, and blue. Black, which contains all colors; white, which contains all colors; and blue, which is royalty. And that stone is about showing that the Jewish people is a mixture of tzaddikim, balei tshuva, from birth, Ashkenazim, Sfardim, everything is one big mixture. That's because Yehuda is Yehudim, right? The Jewish people are called on the name of Yehuda. And so he talks about also that David HaMelech was a big Baal Tshuva, and that Yehuda, why was David HaMelech a big Baal Tshuva? Because he went through all kinds of mistakes, as opposed to let's say Shaul HaMelech. Shaul HaMelech, he made one major mistake. David HaMelech, had a whole different part of his personality, and he went through a whole bunch of different kinds of situations, and that's why he's going to be in the end Mashiach ben David. Shaul was Mashiach ben Yosef, the perfect tzaddik, except for him made one mistake, and that one mistake about Amalek, right? This is the month of eradicating Amalek, and then he made that mistake of Amalek. But David HaMelech had to be able to relate to every single Jew. When Shaul HaMelech, when King Saul was king, all the Jewish people were righteous, and all the Jewish people were Shomer Mitzvot. So for him to do that one major mistake was a big thing. But David HaMelech is going to be Mashiach ben David, and when Mashiach ben David comes, which is we're waiting any second, he's going to have to deal with the situation of the Jewish people right now, which is majority, I don't know which percentage, but mamish, gigantic majority is totally uneducated, doesn't know anything. The internet is changing their status. It used to be that before the internet, everyone was called Tinok Shenishba. Now with the internet, their status is changing, and the world is changing. Also, with the world becoming more spiritual, the status of Tinok Shenishba, which means a child who was taken into captivity and raised as a non-Jew. That's what Tinok Shenishma means. And it doesn't have to be that exact scenario. It means a child, a person who was raised without any Jewish education or any Jewish awareness or any godly awareness. That's called a Tinok Shenishma. And again, in olden days, pre-internet, even, probably, until 1990, anyone who didn't have a Jewish education, you couldn't fault them, because there was no way, unless you went to a library, unless you went to a shul, and it wasn't that wasn't the way the world was though in those days. So the people who were unobservant were called Tinok Shenishma, and they got off the hook. Nowadays, there's more awareness in the world, and so the definition of who is the Tinok Shenishma is changing. But in hand with that is more awareness of God. So it's not like, anyone can say they never heard of God or Israel or the state of Israel, right? Now the state of Israel is in the news every second. The state of Israel it's crazy, just crazy. I'll tell you something interesting. Let's see if there's anybody from the UK. But the UK people are going to get this later anyway. They're going to get the shir later. So somebody said, they quote, I've said this for years, that the Queen of England, when you said the word the Queen, just those two words, the Queen, then everyone on planet Earth who was in the Western world knew you were referring to the Queen of England. And even though I did not know her personally, and I have nothing personal against her, but she was called the Klipa of Malchus. What is Malchus? Malchus means royalty. Now there are many royal families in Europe, whatever, but none of them are really important. None of them have a yichus that has a family tradition that goes back too far, and also none of them were significant. Even though they're rich people, whatever, but their countries are insignificant. But the UK, United Kingdom, was a huge kingdom. And by the way, Spain and France were also huge kingdoms, but because of their anti-Semitism, they got wiped off the map of importance. UK, huge kingdom. They only had one major anti-Semitic event in their history, when they kicked all the Jews out of the UK or out of England, the European England. So the Queen of England, she was the Klipa of Malchus. In other words, she represented royalty in an unholy. Not that she was evil, I don't know anything about her, but she represented the concept of the royalty from the other side, not from the side of holiness. And now she died. When she died, the royalty fizzled out, and now you see that their king he's sick, and whatever, their princess got sick, and the son ran away, and the other daughter, they're all fizzling out. They're fizzling out. And the chutzpah of their prince, what's his name, William, that he made a statement yesterday, and it sounded like, he made a statement for a ceasefire and all of that, and everyone in the world knows that a ceasefire we had a ceasefire October 6th. We were in a ceasefire. Whenever we make a ceasefire with Hamas, and we've had 5 of them, I think, they just regroup, rearm, refresh themselves, and then do it again. Ceasefire doesn't mean anything to them. So when they're calling now for ceasefires, it just means Israelis stop fighting and stop trying to get rid of Hamas and let them regroup, let them live. So the fact that he said that showed that even the younger generation is doomed in terms of Malchus. They're not going to be. So, okay, I don't know how I got to that from Yehuda, but okay, Yehuda's Mashiach ben Yosef, Yehuda Mashiach ben David, and that's going to change the world. And that color is a multicolored stone. In English, I call it a carbuncle, in Hebrew, nofach, but it means different colors. And then comes the 2 Yisachar and Zvulun, and those are both muddy colors. Interesting. Yisachar is blue, and Zvulun is like a diamond. Is like, even though later on it's called, there's another one called diamond, but Yisachar is clear. Zvulun is clear. Yisachar is blue, and Zvulun is clear. And we know the concept of Yisachar Zvulun. Yisachar learns, Zvulun works and gives half the money to Yisachar, and they have a shared Olam Hazeh and a shared Olam Haba. And the idea of blue is clarity. The idea of clear is like the without color, and it represents money. It's gray, clear, diamond, crystal, that color, which represents wealth. And that's why Zvulun and Yisachar were both equally wealthy and equally gifted spiritually. Now, it's interesting because Yisachar stone is called a sapir, and sapir like a sefer because he's learning, and Zvulun's stone is called a yahalom, which we call now a diamond, but Rav Kaplan calls it a quartz or a crystal. But the yahalom, the name of the yahalom is Yud-Hey, means God, God's name, and halom means here. God is present, and that's Zvulun's stone. The idea there being that even when Zvulun was working, and he was out making money, whatever he was doing, but since he was supporting Yisachar, that even in his working time, he saw God as being present in his everyday life. So Yahalom, God is here. And we do that all the time when we're cooking and baking and cleaning and shopping and talking to people, and we all do that with consciousness, with God consciousness. When we were younger, think about the difference between how you are now and how you were when you were 18 years old. Unless you were tzaddikas already from the age of 18, but now everybody who watches these classes are righteous tzaddikas women. So think of, and some of the truth is some of you are very young, but because the world has evolved, now we all do that. Whenever we're cooking, whenever we're shopping, we're always talking to God. Always. That's why they invented the Bluetooth. Yeah? You know what's a Bluetooth? Or Israelis say Bluetooth. And they spell it with a samach at the end. The Bluetooth. Why do they have that? Because when you have something in your ear and you're walking and you're talking, so people say that you're talking to whoever you're talking to on the telephone. It used to be it was an earphone, earplug, whatever it's called, earphone, right? If you had earphones and there was a wire going to whatever, and people saw you there talking with the earphones, they said, "Oh, you're talking on the telephone." But you all know that nowadays we talk to Hashem. So you could put on the headphones, the earphones, the Bluetooth, and talk in the street. Go walk and talk. Nobody will think two things about it. Nobody will think anything about it. Because they'll think you're talking to whoever it is on the phone. Because we're always talking to Hashem. That's called Yahalom. That's called a diamond. That's why by the Goyim they have a funny expression. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. So that, remember, it's still the expression. It represents the concept of a woman should be bedecked in jewelry, and diamond is an engagement ring, and all of that. I think maybe that was a song, or it was for sure an expression in American English. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. But the Vilna Gaon tells us, and we say this all the time, because every time we say expressions, we remember this teaching of the Vilna Gaon. I really have to find, if anybody, I forgot which sefer, I saw it in years and years and years ago, decades ago, that he says, pay attention, because he encouraged his students to learn sciences and linguistics. And he said, pay attention to linguistics, because in every single language, you have words and phrases that are encouraging you in Avodas Hashem. So diamonds are a girl's best friend means, and why a girl's best friend? It could be diamonds are a person's best friend. Because the men wear diamonds and jewelry and all of that, and traditionally men always wore jewelry, kings and all of that wore jewelry. But diamonds are a girl's best friend because the girl is the one who speaks more. Women are Malchus. Women are the aspect of Malchus, and we speak more. And Yahalom, and what are we speaking? Yahalom is a diamond. What are we speaking? We're speaking all the time and saying, Hashem is in my life. Please, Hashem, be with me in Osherad, and be with me in the kitchen, and be with me when I'm going to teach, and be with me when I'm becoming the President of the United States, and whatever it is. A woman is always talking to God, much more than a man. So I had such a precious experience this week. I'm going to just tell it to you, and then we're going to stop, and maybe next week we'll finish the other 6 stones. So I was coming to, and I was Baruch Hashem, Chasei Hashem. This year we have to give credit where credit is due. Rebbetzin Heller Gottlieb started this year 25 years ago, and it was in the Vey. It was in the Vey's building, and it was a big deal. We used to rent out a room, and we used to have a big oil, and a lot of women would come, and we would pay the Vey a little bit, pay the teachers a little bit, and so now because of Corona, we stopped. When Corona happened, we went on Zoom. The whole world went on Zoom. We discovered Zoom, and we got lazy and we stayed on Zoom, which is fine. And even though I would like to always invite you, if anybody's in Har Nof on a Wednesday at 12 o'clock, believe Neder, you're invited here to sit in my house while I do the shir. So, or if I'm in school, sometimes I'm in school doing the shir. So this week I was leaving the Vey, I was coming home, I was walking down the hill. You know, you walk down the hill is easier than walking up the hill. And so walking up the hill, people are walking slowly. Walking down the hill, you're getting pushed by gravity. And I see a very familiar face. First of all, I saw a lot of women with tichels and shaitels, and so every once in a while they rent out, Neve rents out one of the buildings, and you know, we have a beautiful auditorium, a theater room, and they make all kinds of different schools rent out the area just to make events for their students. So there was a mother-daughter event, and I see all these women are coming with their daughters, and it was nice to see it, you know, Neve invaded by a lot of women, hundreds. I saw there were hundreds of women there. And I see a woman coming, there's a woman walking up the hill, and she has this big giant smile on her face. It turns out it was one of my Neve students from 22 years ago, she said, and she's coming with her daughter, who's a Beis Yaakov girl, who's like, I don't know, she looked like she was in 9th grade, 10th grade, and they're going to this event, and she's telling her daughter, this is where I went to school, and there's, you know, Rachel Silver. She didn't call me Rachel Silver. And we gave each other a big hug and caught up a little bit. And then we were talking, I don't know how we came about it, and she said, you know, the other day, because her daughter goes to a real super duper Beis Yaakov, and they look like regular typical super Geula, they live in Geula and whatever, the whole bit, so they should be well. And then she said to her daughter out of nowhere, I don't know how it happened, she said, to her daughter right in front of me, she said, you know, you could always talk to Hashem. Rabbi Silver taught me. You could talk to Hashem. Well, you know, you're supposed to talk to Hashem all the time. Do you know that even? Like, did they even teach you that? And the girl looked at her mother like, come on, Ma. You know, and oh, my mother's a Baal Shuva, and she's telling me all this stuff, Baal Shuva stuff. And then she, you know, and she was remembering what she learned as a Choseh B'Shuvah, that's so part of her life is always talking to Hashem in every circumstance. Then she realized, and Mamish at that moment, she said, maybe you don't know that, to her daughter. Do you realize that you can talk to Hashem all the time and ask Hashem whatever you want and just tell him what's going on? It was interesting that happened. So that's called Yahalom. Diamonds are a girl's best friend, meaning for a woman, a female is always as conscious has a consciousness that we can always talk to Hashem. We're always bringing Hashem into our life. We're always thanking Hashem, pleading with Hashem, praising Hashem, and again thanking Hashem. And this is a female, because Malchus is the woman, and Malchus is the pet, the mouth, and Malchus is the ability to bring God into the nitty gritty of whatever life you're going through. Okay, so we finished half of them. I was thinking in the beginning that I should start from the end of the stones, because I usually finish the first 6 and then I don't remember if I go through the next, because this is usually Purim time we do these parashiyos. But believe that the Bezrat Hashem, I'll leave the sefer out on my table and I'll go through the next 6 stones with you. And until then, I'm going to wish you all a great week. I'm going to stay on. I'm just going to turn off the recording. You should have a good week, a healthy, safe, Mashiach, happy, all good.
Wish you the same.